Number 3, here's an idea. What if you were to actually make a prediction with your model? Like any prediction.
I stuck my foot in my mouth, and I'd like to think that I have the disease called foot-in-mouth disease. Because it happens all the time.
You know, those things that you have to do in science for it to be science? Pick any celestial object, a planet, a comet, a star. Now pick any time in the future, and using only the flat Earth model and nothing else, tell me where it will be at that time. If you can't do this, and I know you can't, consider admitting that your model is absolutely irrelevant.
Drawing on mathematics and geometry, the ancient Greeks developed astronomy and calculated the motions of the sun, moon, and major planets, which they thought rotated around a stationary Earth. Stationary Earth.
If the ancient Greek scientists could produce these gear systems 2,000 years ago, the whole history of Western technology would have to be rewritten.
And it is done on a flat model. But anyway, so think about this, people, especially the newbies out there. You know, they're telling us that the Earth is going around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. And then, of course, the sun going around the Milky Way at 483,000 miles an hour. And then when we get up to the Milky Way going around to the Great Attractor, we are at 1,300,000 miles per hour. And this has been going on for millennia, and the skies have never changed. What is their excuse? Oh, the stars are so far away, you'd never know. And relativity, right? A bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
It upsets all our ideas about what the ancient Greeks were capable of. It rewrites the history of technology. It tells us that things were going on in 2nd century BC Greece, which we had no idea about.
And using only the flat Earth model and
And what I ended up with was models of the planets. This is a model of the Greek cosmos, geocentric. You can think of this cover plate in the middle as representing the Earth, and cover plate in the middle as representing the Earth, and cover plate in the Earth, cover plate in the Earth,
Stationary
Earth,
Stationary
Earth, geocentric, Earth, geocentric, Earth,
Cover plate in the geocentric Stationary Earth.
everything goes round it. The easy one to spot is the moon, because that's the fastest moving thing on the dial, and it's the front pointer. The night sky was the ancient Greeks' television. What else were you going to look at night? People were much, much more aware of the sky. The calendar was organised according to the moon. Official positions changed. Debts became payable on the new moon. You had to have a calendar that in some way reconciled the year controlled by the sun with the month controlled by the moon. They're tricky numbers, and they're built into the model.
What if you were to actually make a prediction with your model?
They're built into the model.
Prediction with
They're
your
built into the model.
prediction with
In fact, every single number I've given you in this video, every direction, every speed, every angle, every time, they're all only approximations. They're averages. The whole system is constantly changing. It is a wonder we have eclipses at all. But to the untrained eye, just watching it happening, we're back to a random movement of the sun and the moon in the sky, and occasionally they happen to cross. But then, out of all this chaos, another cosmic coincidence steps forward to save the day. Just like the moon's apparent size happens to match the sun's apparent size, there is one special combination of the 3 different types of lunar months that happens to line up perfectly. If you take 223 new moon months, so from closest to the sun to closest to the sun, and you compare that to 239 of the months between the closest point to the Earth to the closest point to the Earth, and then you compare those to 242 of the months between when the moon goes through the Earth's orbit back to when it next goes through the Earth's orbit, all 3 of those are pretty much exactly the same length of time. They all come out spot on 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. And so it means if out of all this random movement you somehow have a solar eclipse, you know that 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours later, we will have had an integer number of all the different types of months involved. And so we will have returned to pretty much exactly the same geometry. There will be another very similar eclipse 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours later. It's called the Saros cycle, and it allows us to predict when eclipses are going to happen in the reasonably near future.
What if you were to actually make a prediction with your model?
In fact, every single number I've given you in this video, every direction, every speed, every angle, every time, they're all only approximations. They're averages. The whole system is constantly changing. It is a wonder we have eclipses at all. Out of all this chaos, another cosmic coincidence steps forward to save the day. To save the day. It's called the Saros cycle.
Prediction with
to save the day.
We've often discussed, based on evidences from NASA official website, that U.S. Space Agency become the center of space agencies in the world, which has a budget of $19.3 billion per year. They are unable to compute the eclipse with heliocentric assumption. Therefore, NASA predicts the eclipse by using the Saros cycle made by ancient Babylonian, using the assumption that the Earth is motionless. Even though the evidence has been exposed in plain sight, a professor of astrophysics that we don't even need to mention his name, still tried to deny by saying that NASA does not use the Saros cycle and NASA have the software to calculate the eclipse without Saros cycle. Well, let's prove that the both statement was true or lie. Consider it just practice for you all, to take on the debate with the Globers that doesn't want to accept reality. 1. Prediction of eclipses on August 21, 2017. Let's go to the NASA eclipse prediction on August 21, 2017. There's a link in the description. 2. Who predicts the eclipse at NASA? Please look at the bottom of that page. Written there, all eclipse calculations are by Fred S. Pennock, and he assumes full responsibility for their accuracy. Would you believe that? NASA's budget is $19.3 billion per year. All they do is trillion-dollar satellite business that the cost charged to the telecommunication fees of people in the world, which they said already sent people 6 times to the moon. But for calculating eclipses just depends on a retired employee named Fred S. Pennock. I am laughing. Fred S. Pennock, NASA's retired employee who responsible for calculating the eclipse. See the official explanation of NASA in Picture tab. And then, shamelessly, NASA wrote, he assumes full responsibility for their accuracy. I am laughing again. 3. How Fred S. Pennock predict eclipse? Now, let's verify the statement of Fairy Tales professor that NASA calculated the eclipse does not use Saros cycle. NASA may not predict it. Who predicted was a former employee named Fred S. Pennock. Don't get it wrong, guys. Who we laugh at is NASA, not Fred S. Pennock. Indeed, it shows that Fred had the knowledge that not possessed by all scientists who are hired by NASA. From here, we can draw the conclusion. Fred S. Pennock is a rare human being. So rare, that even after retirement he remains the only sources of NASA in predicting the eclipse. Now, use your intellectual brain. Let's see how Fred S. Pennock predicts an eclipse. Please open the NASA eclipse predictions from year 1870 until 2573. Okay, it's crazy how great the man who predicts eclipse. There's a link in the description. Apparently, based on statements in the official NASA website, Fred S. Pennock calculated eclipses based on yes, Saros cycle. I am laughing again and again. No way to run, NASA. 4. The NASA eclipse prediction software. The professor also referred to a link that said, NASA software for calculating or predicting eclipses. Please check the link in the description. Just try to tell him to wear glasses and read correctly, at the bottom right of this website. And what is it? Eclipse software that published by NASA is use. The Saros cycle. Very, very funny. Please take your own conclusions. The statement that NASA doesn't use the Saros cycle and NASA have a software to calculate the eclipse without Saros cycle is true or lie. 5. Geocentric coordinates. It is obvious that the NASA eclipse predictions using the Saros cycle, assuming if the Earth motionless. Please check the NASA official explanation about the eclipse on August 21, 2017. Clearly written in that NASA's explanation. The geocentric coordinates. That means, the path of the eclipse using the coordinates with the assumption the Earth is center of the universe. Why? Because, if the Earth rotates with 1670 kilometers per hour, there will be no pattern of eclipses. That's funny too. Guys, they actually already cornered. There have been many lies. Had reached the stage where the accumulation of the lies of $1 trillion could be brought down through the assumption of the essence. The distance, the diameter, speed from Earth, Moon, and Sun based on heliocentric version was totally wrong. Proven that it cannot be used for calculating eclipses. And here's our challenge. Please prove that our statement is wrong. Please calculate 3 times the eclipse, make a model according to heliocentric dogma, scale on neutral software like Sonoma 4D, AutoCAD, etc. No one will. NASA, with a state budget or people's money, $19.3 billion per year was not able to do so. 6. The wrong position of the Moon and Sun. Recently Dr. Zach, one of Flat Earth's brightest and bold researchers, published the results of the software calculation that the eclipse of August 21, 2017 it is not possible to occur if you use heliocentric assumption. NASA eclipse animation, without the scale of the distance of diameter and speed heliocentric version. There is no shadow tapered like that. Been forced to be match. Propaganda for tricking people. We can be a little heartened, Flat Earth societies who did the study without eating people's money, thus diligently performs measurements and experiments with scientific method. The debate is not just pointing to another link that actually there is no answer. Dr. Zach take this scientific data. Prediction of eclipses on August 21, 2017 from NASA official website. The position of the Sun from suncalc.org on the date, hour, minute and second occurrence of eclipses. The position of the Moon from mooncalc.org on the date, hour, minute and second occurrence of eclipses. Enter all data in neutral software like AutoCAD. It's like our challenge to the open letter, isn't it? For them it might be an incredible hard thing. For us, it is indeed a regular research that we do. apparently, by using that general science data, the moon and sun position are wrong. With such a position, eclipses should occur at sea, not in the US as NASA writes. With such a position of moon and sun, there could be no eclipse in the US as NASA predicted. Then, Dr. Zach puts the official science data into the AutoCAD software. The result is, there is no eclipse in the US or at the sea. Eclipse deviated far out of the Earth. It's funny, very funny. 7. Just one time of the eclipse it has already knocked out. The highlights of the results from Dr. Zach's study is, it turns out the heliocentric cosmology to quantify one-time eclipse has already failed. It's not possible for 3 times eclipse is the challenge we ask.
Based on Babylonian observations, the Greeks built a machine to look into the future and forecast eclipses.
Amongst a whole mass of symbols, I found this symbol in the document. It was short for the word ora, meaning hour. So what that told us was that not only did this mechanism predict eclipses, but it predicted the hour of the eclipse as well. As the hand sweeps along the scale, here it's just reaching a lunar eclipse, and here then we've got a solar eclipse in this month, followed by a lunar eclipse in that month. Our research group pooled our resources in a discussion on the internet, and Yanis Bitsakis in Athens found the phrase, "the colour is black" in the eclipse inscriptions. Alexander Jones in Toronto found this really exciting, and he then discovered the phrase, "the colour is fire red."
We were discovering a very sophisticated machine that not only was predicting eclipses decades in advance and what time of the day or night they were happening, but even the direction the shadow was going to cross and what color the eclipse sun or moon was going to be.
Michael Wright made an absolutely brilliant observation from his X-rays. He discovered that one of the gears at the back of the mechanism, mounted on this large 223 tooth gear, had a pin on it.
This is the pin and slot mechanism. There's a wheel in the back of the instrument. You can see with the naked eye that it's got some sort of slot in it. The next thing you see is this round ghost in the slot. There is a pin.
But Wright couldn't figure out what the pin and slot were for.
And he threw the idea away. So it's a tragedy for him in a way that he had this absolutely the most brilliant observation in the history of the mechanism.
I didn't know what it was doing there. I even came to wonder whether it was a sort of mechanical fossil.
But he made this other very critical discovery. He discovered that the gear with a pin turns on a slightly different axis than the gear with a slot. So this mechanical device induces a variability in the motion of one of the gears.
When the wheels are like this, and the pin is at the inside of the slot, the driven wheel on top is going fast. When we come round here, and the pin has moved to the outside of the slot, the driven wheel is going slow. And this is modelling the way that the moon's speed in the sky actually varies.
I was on the plane to Athens. I was playing around with the figures. I knew the input gear had 27 teeth, so I put that into my calculator and calculated the result. And to my deep disappointment, it was too big. So I thought maybe it's only 26 teeth. So I put that into the calculator, and it was too small. Now, I was a mathematician, and mathematicians often have slightly crazy ideas. So I tried putting in a gear with 26.5 teeth, and I pressed the key on a calculator, and the result was 0.112579655. Exactly the right answer to 9 places of decimals. It just hit me like a thunderbolt. Twice 26.5 is 53. Michael Wright had been correct about the 53-tooth gear. The riddle of the 53-tooth gear had been solved at last. It turns the large 223 gear with just the right 9-year rotation, so that the pin and slot exactly models the ancient Greek theory of the moon's variable motion.
I've never seen anything like it before. No one has. Where did you get it?
I believe this, the Antikythera mechanism is a really great computer. And after they have in their hands this device, they start to create, for example, things like the astrolabio or the sextants, which is like a tiny part of this kind of mechanism. And of course, they make the reverse engineering and they come across with the globe.
Yep. Oh, and by the way,
they have the tools. I mean that.
One thing that's interesting about the Antikythera device, and I learned this while researching it, is that guess what everything is based off of, all the rotation? 2,100 plus years ago. You got it, Polaris.
Yes. Exactly.
Bada bing.
What's that?
What's the matter? What is that?
The path that the moon's shadow makes over the Earth during a total eclipse is called the path of totality. To see a total eclipse, you must be in the path of totality.
It upsets all our ideas.
Heliocentrists claim that lunar eclipses are caused by the shadow of the ball Earth occulting the moon. The idea is that the Sun, Earth, and Moon spheres perfectly align like 3 billiard balls in a row so that the Sun's light casts the Earth's shadow onto the Moon. Unfortunately for heliocentrists, this explanation is rendered completely invalid due to the fact that lunar eclipses have happened and continue to happen regularly when both the Sun and Moon are still visible together above the horizon. For the Sun's light to be casting Earth's shadow onto the Moon, the three bodies must be aligned in a straight 180-degree syzygy. The Newtonian hypothesis involves the necessity of the Sun, in the case of a lunar eclipse, being on the opposite side of a globular Earth, to cast its shadow on the Moon, but, since eclipses of the Moon have taken place with both the Sun and the Moon above the horizon, it follows that it cannot be the shadow of the Earth that eclipses the Moon, and that the theory is a blunder. By William Carpenter, 100 Proofs the Earth is not a globe. That the eclipser of the Moon is a shadow at all is assumption, no proof whatever is offered. That the Moon receives her light from the Sun, and that therefore her surface is darkened by the Earth intercepting the Sun's light, is not proved. It is not proved that the Earth moves in an orbit round the Sun, and therefore, by being in different positions, conjunction of Sun, Earth, and Moon, day sometimes occur. The contrary has been clearly proved, that the Moon is not eclipsed by a shadow, that she is self-luminous, and not merely a reflector of solar light, and therefore could not possibly be obscured or eclipsed by a shadow from any object whatever, and that the Earth is devoid of motion, either on axis or in an orbit through space. Hence to call that an argument for the Earth's rotundity, where every necessary proposition is only assumed, and in relation to which direct and practical evidence to the contrary is abundant, is to stultify the judgment and every other reasoning faculty. By Dr. Samuel Robotham, Zetetic Astronomy, Earth not a globe. According to the globular theory, a lunar eclipse occurs when the Sun, Earth, and Moon are in a direct line, but it is on record that since about the 15th century over 50 eclipses have occurred while both Sun and Moon have been visible above the horizon. By F. H. Cook, The Terrestrial Plane. As early as the time of Pliny, there are records of lunar eclipses happening while both the Sun and Moon are visible in the sky. The Greenwich Royal Observatory recorded that during the lunar eclipses of July 17, 1590, November 3, 1648, June 16, 1666, and May 26, 1668 the Moon rose eclipsed whilst the Sun was still above the horizon. Kalucha's Geography recorded that on September 20, 1717 and April 20, 1837 the Moon appeared to rise eclipsed before the Sun had set. Sir Henry Holland also noted in his Recollections of Past Life the April 20, 1837 phenomena where the Moon rose eclipsed before the Sun set. The Daily Telegraph recorded it happening again on January 17, 1870, then again in July of the same year, and it continues to happen during lunar eclipses to this day. It is alleged by the learned that at a lunar eclipse the Earth casts a shadow on the Moon, by intercepting the light of the Sun. The shadow, it is alleged, is circular, and as only a globe can cast a circular shadow, and as that shadow is cast by the Earth, of course the Earth is a globe. In fact, what better proof could any reasonable person require? Powerful reasoning, says the dupe. Let us see. I have already cited a case where Sun and Moon have been seen with the Moon eclipsed, and as the Earth was not between, or they both could not have been seen, the shadow said to be on the Moon could not possibly have been cast by the Earth. But as refraction is charged with raising the Moon above the horizon, when it is said to be really beneath, and the amount of refraction made to tally with what would be required to square the matter, let us see how refraction would act in regard to a shadow. Refraction can only exist where the object and the observer are in different densities. If a shilling be put in the bottom of a glass and observed, there is no refraction. Refraction casts the image of the shilling upwards, but a shadow always downwards. If a basin be taken and put near a light, so that the shadow will shorten inwards and downwards, but if the rod is allowed to rest in the basin and water poured in, the rod will appear to be bent upwards. This places the matter beyond dispute and proves that it is out of the range of possibility that the shadow said to be on the Moon could be that of the Earth. By Thomas Winship, Zetetic Cosmogony. In an attempt to explain away the inconsistencies in their theory, heliocentrists usually claim light refraction must be happening on a scale large enough to account for the phenomena. George G. Gary in his Astronomy and Astronomical Instruments claims that this is the reason the full moon has sometimes been seen eclipsed above the horizon before the sunset, due to a horizontal refraction of 36 or 37 minutes, generally about 33 minutes, which is equal to the diameter of the sun or moon. Even if this highly implausible reverse-engineered damage control explanation is accepted, it cannot explain how Earth-bound observers are supposedly able to see 12,000 miles 180 degrees around the globe. Even if we admit refraction, and that to the extent seemingly required to prove that when the eclipsed moon is seen above the horizon, we are still confronted with a fact which entirely annihilates every theory propounded to account for the phenomenon. Taking the astronomer's own equation of 8 to the mile, varying inversely as the square of the distance, for the curvature of the Earth, where sun and moon are both seen at a lunar eclipse, the center of the sun is said to be in a straight line with the centers of the Earth and the moon, each luminary being 90 degrees from the observer. This would give about 6,000 miles as the distance of each body from the observer. Now, what is the curvature in 6,000 miles? No less than 24 million feet or 4,545 miles. Therefore, according to the astronomer's own showing, an observer would have to get up into space 4,545 miles before he could see both sun and moon above his horizon at a lunar eclipse. As lunar eclipses have been seen from the surface of the Earth with sun and moon both above the horizon at the same time, it is conclusively proved that there is no curvature of the Earth, and, therefore, that the world is a plane, and cannot by any possibility be globular. This one proof alone demolishes forever the fabric of astronomical imagination and popular credulity.
It upsets all our ideas.
People who actually understand the geometry of the Earth and the solar system can predict a solar eclipse, specifying the start and end time down to the second and tracing its precise path down to the square mile. Doing that even a single time means the model used to make the prediction has been undeniably verified, and it's done every single time. Every single time.
I stuck my foot in my mouth, and I'd like to think that I have the disease called foot-in-mouth disease, because it happens all the time.
Every single time. Anyone who doesn't see the importance of that has no clue how science works.
There's a lot of controversies regarding solar eclipse on August 21st, 2017 that leads to the ultimate question: is the heliocentric model correct or wrong? In this short video, collaborating with Sugianto Sulistiono, a professional doctorate majoring in computer physics, and Najwa Azahra, a medical doctor, founder of Indonesian Flat Earth Community, we will use all scientific data to study the Great American Eclipse. The conclusions are quite devastating. The speed is deceiving, the angle is wrong, the path is impossible, and the moon's diameter is wrong.
Satellite, satellite, minus 10. Twilight, twilight. I feel the moon pulling me away.
We all know that the sun and the moon both rise in the east and set in the west. In your flat earth, what you see is what you get. The sun and the moon are moving clockwise from east to west.
What I can do.
As you know, in our flat earth, if you are facing north wherever you are, your left is the west and your right is the east. Therefore, if you fly straight from west to east, you will come back to your starting point.
Satellite, satellite,
And so do the sun and the moon. The other fact is, if a source of light moving in one direction passes an object, the shadow will always move in the opposite direction. So, as the sun and the moon are moving from east to west, and the sun passes the moon, the shadow is moving in opposite direction, from west to east, exactly like reality. Because in our flat earth, what you see is what you get. Now, in the globe model, in order to make the sun and the moon rise in the east, set in the west, they have to make the globe model rotate from west to east. In this way, the east side of the earth encounters the sun earlier than the west side of the earth. Most of the time, the globe model can accommodate almost everything from flat earth reality, projected in different shapes, different sizes, different distances, and different speeds. It's only mathematical assumptions. They calculated one by one, gradually and individually within thousands of years. It's all started 2,300 years ago when Aristarchus calculated the size and distance of the moon using eclipses based on assumptions if the earth was a ball. From that assumptions, he calculated the size and distance of the sun. Then people adopted his method and assumptions to calculate the whole solar system, then the whole galaxy, and so on and so on. Assumptions upon assumptions. But sometimes, when a bunch of mathematical assumptions mix together to explain rare cases like solar eclipse, they just don't add up. Many people argue whether the globe model can make eclipse shadow from west to east or not. Let's make it clear once and for all. If we put all the data on the table transparently, in a way that everyone can understand, measure, and verify themselves, the answer is yes and no. yes if, and but no. Now the yes if first. Yes, eclipse shadow on the globe model can move from west to east only if Moon's orbital speed is faster than Earth's rotation speed. In heliocentric model, the Moon's orbital speed is twice as fast as the Earth's rotation speed. With this paradigm, for sure, the shadow will move from west to east. Let's make a model to make it easier to understand. The distance is not to scale. The Moon should be 30 Earth diameter away. If the Earth rotates 1,670 kilometers in 1 hour to your right, and the Moon orbits 3,683 kilometers to your right too, then you draw a straight line from Moon's diameter to the Earth. You will see the Moon's line is farther than the Earth's line. But of course, 3,683 kilometers is farther than 1,670 kilometers. You don't even need a model to understand. This is called linear speed. In this way, the eclipse shadow moves from west to east because the Moon is faster than the Earth. It's mathematically correct based on that assumptions and paradigm. But there's a big problem. It defies natural fact. If the Moon is faster than the Earth's rotation, you would see the Moon is setting to the east, the opposite of reality. Let's use mooncalc.org to make it easier. Find a place that has 90-degree elevation of the Moon. Imagine the Earth is moving 1,670 kilometers per hour, west to east to your right, and the Moon is moving 3,683 kilometers per hour to the same direction. Within 1 hour, you would see the Moon is more to your right, because it's faster and travels more distance than the Earth, right? Wrong. See what happens if you add time for 1 hour. Ooh, the Moon is going to your left, because the Earth is rotating faster. How come 1,670 kilometers per hour travels faster than 3,683 kilometers per hour? It's because the distance traveled by the Moon is 60 times longer than Earth's circumference. Now we're talking about the other kind of speed, the angular speed. Take bicycle wheel as an example of angular speed. The farthest part from the axis, the tire, is moving faster than the axis, but actually it's the same angular speed. The farther from the axis, the faster it moves, but actually the same angular speed. Now, the Earth is rotating 360 degrees in 24 hours. It means 15 degrees per hour. If the Earth is moving 15 degrees counterclockwise to your right, and according to heliocentrism, the Sun is at rest, then you will see the Sun appears to be setting 15 degrees to your left. That's the angular speed of the Sun due to Earth's rotation, okay? While the Moon is orbiting the Earth 360 degrees in 29.5 days. Some people like to say 27.3 days, sidereal month, the Moon's position with respect to the stars. It's irrelevant, for we are counting the Moon's position with respect to the Earth, nothing to do with the stars. So we have to use synodic month, average 29.5 days. The angular speed of Moon's orbit is 1 per 24 hours divided by 29.5 days times 360 degrees equals to 0.51 degree per hour. That means when the Earth in an hour is rotating 15 degrees to your right, making the Sun appears to be setting to your left 15 degrees. The Moon is moving 0.51 degree to your right. That makes the Moon appears to be slower than the Earth's rotation. Let's go back to mooncalc.org. The Moon's elevation angle is 90 degrees. Then change the time to 1 hour later. Now you see the elevation is subtracted to 75.81 degree. 75 degree because the Earth is rotating 15 degree from previous 90 degree elevation. 0.81 degree is the Moon's traveling distance in 1 hour. Mooncalc is using different moon distance on that day. Or perhaps they're using sidereal month. It's all mathematical assumptions. They don't even look to the sky. The Moon moves 0.5 degree against the Earth moves 15 degrees per hour. With these assumptions and paradigm, for sure, the eclipse shadow moves from east to west, the opposite of reality. So which one applies to the Moon and the Earth's speeds that creates eclipse shadow? Linear speed or angular speed? They will say it's the linear speed that matters.
The Moon is orbiting about twice as fast as the Earth is spinning. So if we're looking down on the Earth and we're at the Moon, we see the Earth spinning, but the Moon is moving faster.
Wrong. Even if you're at the Moon, in 1 hour you would see the Earth is setting 0.51 degree to your left, while it's rotating 15 degrees to your right. Even if you're looking from the Moon, the Earth's rotation is still faster. That means eclipse shadow in the globe model goes from east to west, the opposite of reality. Perhaps other people would say, oh, the Moon is slower than the Earth, but the shadow moves faster. That makes the shadow moves from west to east. Well, this sounds plausible in theory, but if you put the data, it's not correct. The Sun is 400 times bigger than the Moon. The Moon's traveling distance for 5 hours is just like a dot to the heliocentric Sun. If the moon moves in 5 hours, 18,415 kilometers, it only makes 0.006989959 degree difference. If the moon moves 18,415 kilometers to the right side of the sun, the shadow's distance on Earth is 18,460 kilometers, almost the same with the distance traveled by the moon. Science says eclipse shadow moves at the same speed with the moon, and the eclipse shadow path is the same length with the distance traveled by the moon. So, if someone says the moon is slower than the Earth but the shadow moves faster to make shadow from west to east, it's debunked by their own science. Another possibility, other people would say the Earth is also orbiting the Sun. That makes the shadow moves from west to east. Again, a plausible theory if you don't do the math. How come the Earth that's rotating 1,670 kilometers to your right, and the moon is 384,000 kilometers away, orbiting the Earth at 3,683 kilometers per hour, and the Sun is 149.6 million kilometers from the Earth, while the Earth is orbiting the Sun at 110,000 kilometers per hour. It's almost 100 times faster than the speed of sound. Plus, the Sun is also moving at 72,000 kilometers per hour, almost 60 times faster than the speed of sound. Can create eclipse shadow 18,415 kilometers on Earth within 5 hours. Do the math, do it yourself. They never include the Earth's orbit in calculating eclipses because they assume the moon is always attached with the Earth wherever it goes. In most solar system animations that you usually see, the sun is at rest. This is heliocentric. The sun is the center of the universe. But later, they knew it's impossible. They say the sun is also moving at 72,000 kilometers per hour across the space. Another mathematical assumptions on paper without experiment. They never put them all together when calculating eclipses. This is very important information. Most people think that NASA can predict eclipses accurately, that they have very advanced knowledge. Therefore, it proves that heliocentric is true. Unfortunately, that's not the case. All eclipse predictions provided by NASA, including this 5,000,000 years of eclipses, are using Saros cycle invented by ancient Babylonians thousands of years ago. Both solar and lunar eclipses are so predictable because they always repeat in a cycle of 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. It's called Saros cycle and it has nothing to do with heliocentric. Ancient Babylonians believed the Earth is flat, the Sun and the Moon are revolving around the Earth, and so do the stars and other celestial bodies. They didn't calculate the distances, sizes, and speeds based on false assumptions and speculations like heliocentric teachings. They simply observed the sky and took whatever it is. With that paradigm, they can predict eclipses accurately. Such predictions are impossible to be done using heliocentric model. In its 5 millennium catalog of solar and lunar eclipses, NASA wrote that all eclipse calculations are by Fred Espenat, a retired NASA's employee. NASA never calculated and predicted eclipses using heliocentric model. They simply hired the best Saros researcher, their retired employee, Fred Espenat, to calculate and predict eclipses using ancient Babylonians method that has nothing to do with heliocentric. NASA even wrote that Fred Espenat is responsible for the accuracy of those 5,000 years catalog of eclipses. For thousands of years, some astronomers collected eclipse cycle all around the world based on Saros cycle. They have started to do this long time before NASA was established in 1958. Astronomers like Fred Espenat simply collected eclipse database from other local astronomers all around the world. As you see in this table, it's made by other astronomer G. Vandenberg in 1955. That's what Fred Espenat did. He is a very good Saros researcher. Why would NASA need Saros cycle if they can calculate eclipses using heliocentric math? Obviously, because they can. A bunch of mathematical assumptions, when combined together to calculate eclipses, they just don't add up. There's an interesting review from Matt Parker from Stand Up Math's channel. He's the only person who got prestigious title as London Mathematical Society Popular Lecturer, a very smart and articulative mathematician. Here's what he said about predicting eclipses using heliocentric math.
And so I'm going to show you the mathematics behind how we can predict when they're going to happen. We can do the calculations on the elliptical orbit of the moon as the Earth goes around the sun, and we can calculate how often the moon goes between the sun and the Earth. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. It is a wonder we have eclipses at all. But then, out of all this chaos, another cosmic coincidence steps forward to save the day. It's called the Saros cycle, and it allows us to predict when eclipses are going to happen in the reasonably near future.
Some thickheads still don't understand why NASA uses Saros cycle to predict eclipses. They say there are a lot of software predicting eclipses using heliocentric math. You can download free software like Stellarium. It can predict eclipses. Well, if a free software can predict eclipses with heliocentric model, then why NASA, with $19 billion budget per year, can predict eclipses using heliocentric model? Which one makes more sense to you? All astronomy software are using Eclipse database from NASA. It's not the other way around. After NASA published this 5 millennium catalog of solar and lunar eclipses, people use the database to make animation using whatever model they want. Just put one eclipse time to another. The software will automatically adjust to make those two eclipses happen as programmed. It's not the other way around. After you get Eclipse database, you can make animation with square Earth if you like. You can put whatever distance, whatever size. The software will adjust in accordance to the eclipse dates. Some thickheads even try to run from reality by saying NASA provides a software in its website to predict eclipses. Look at this database used by NASA. 5,000 years catalog of solar eclipse database. You can choose what year, what eclipse type, duration, and oops, it's Saros cycle, not heliocentric math. This is the 3D movement of their heliocentric model. The sizes, distances, and speeds are not to scale. This is just to make you have an idea of the true heliocentric concept. The question is, how could NASA, 48 years ago, kept up with the Earth's orbital speed, almost 100 times faster than the speed of sound, and also kept up with the sun speed across the space at almost 60 times faster than the speed of sound? That's just a warming up. In the next section, you will see scientific facts based on official data that eclipse in the globe model is a real fantasy. Scientific data that everybody can verify and do experiment themselves, as referred to as scientific method. With this official data, you will get the undebunkable result that eclipses completely fail to work on the globe model. The data is always there all the time. You just didn't realize what it means.
I'm trying to free your mind, Neo, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
Stay tuned. Let's take a look at their official data taken from NASA's website, the Great American Eclipse Path. NASA also provides external link for more details. This is a picture that destroys globe model if you understand what it means. First, let's find out the eclipse duration that began at the far west and ended at the far east. We're not looking for eclipse beginning and ending in one location, as there are so many locations. What we're looking is the beginning and ending of the whole eclipse happened on that day. You just click the path and they give you complete information. See the start of partial eclipse is 1555 UTC, then the end of partial eclipse 2055 UTC. Now we have credible data that total eclipse duration is 5 hours. Secondly, how far is that eclipse length? Take a look at the longitude. It started at 171.2 degree west and ended at 27.4 degree west. The eclipse length longitude is 143.7 degrees. Do you realize how far is 143.7 degrees in a globe? Let's copy-paste some coordinates from the eclipse site to Google Maps to measure the approximate distance. It's around 40,000 kilometers. Now, apply it to the globe map. See, the eclipse distance, 143.7 degrees, is already 40% of the Earth's circumference. So, within 5 hours of eclipse, out of 24 hours a day, or around 20% of the day, somehow, miraculously, the shadow length covers 40% of the globe. Let's make a scale model now to understand that the eclipse length of 143.7 degrees is mathematically and geometrically impossible. We've made scale model of the eclipse using AutoCAD. In this video, I'm collaborating with many people from Flat Earth 101 community. You have seen the work of Najwa and Angoraji, specially made for you. For this AutoCAD, I want to make it as precise as possible, so I collaborate with people from the community again, this time with Tejo. He's a successful architect who is very familiar with AutoCAD. And he's not alone. People in his office also help us to make this model. They are Flat Earthers too. These are the assumptions I took from Mainstream Science database. We made this model based on that official data at that particular date and that particular spot as referred by NASA. Let's start with the Earth. Of course we can make it pretty with 3D Earth, but that's not our objective now. It's not about beauty, it's about precision. The Earth radius and diameter are precise according to heliocentric data. These 5 lines represent the Earth's rotation for 5 hours, the eclipse duration. Each line represents 15 degrees. 5 lines equal to 75 degrees. The 0 point represents the first second of the eclipse. The Earth rotates anticlockwise from west to east. So if you are standing over here at 0 point, in 5 hours you will be over there. Now let's go to the moon. It's 30 Earth diameters away. The Earth is a small circle over here, and the moon is over there. Let's zoom in. This is the moon at 0 point when the first second of partial eclipse started. These 5 moons represent its movements every hour, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. This is the moon's radius and diameter according to standard heliocentric. This is the moon's traveling distance every hour. Within 5 hours, it travels 18,415 kilometers. That's the linear speed. But the orbit is so big, 29.5 days, and 5 hours means almost nothing. So if you draw a line from the moon's axis to the Earth's axis, this 18,415 kilometers is only 2.55 degrees angular speed on Earth. It's hard to see at its true scale. Let's split it into 2 screens, the moon on your left side, the Earth on your right side. This is the 0 point when the first partial eclipse happened. The line goes to 0 point on Earth. In 5 hours, the moon will be over there. If if you're standing on Earth over here, 5 hours later, you will rotate from west to east and you'll be over here. You will see the moon is setting to the west due to Earth's rotation. Exactly like you've seen at mooncalc, you add time, the moon goes to the west. And the elevation angle is subtracted from 90 degrees to around 75 degrees in 1 hour. For 5 hours, it would be around 18 degrees near the horizon, almost setting. This is the proof that it's the angular speed that applies. What about the linear speed? After 5 hours, the moon's position is over here. We draw straight linear lines from the moon. Where do the lines fall on Earth? Man, it's far outside the Earth. Theoretically, linear speed is wrong. After 5 hours, you will see the moon is setting to the west. In reality, you don't see the moon is over here, like it's setting to your east. The moon is over there, near the horizon, setting in the west. The funny thing is, even though the moon is over here, setting in the east, the shadow will fall outside the Earth. If you use angular speed, eclipse shadow moves from east to west, the opposite of reality. If you're using linear speed, the moon sets in the east, and the shadow falls outside the Earth after a few hours. Any which way, they're wrong. It really doesn't work on the globe model. What about the shadow speed? We've been through this. Their own science says the eclipse shadow speed is the same as the moon speed itself. Look once again at their eclipse shadow speed. The shadow is never faster than the moon speed.
The shadow knows.
Poor globe model. Let's be generous to them. Give the globe model a generous discount. Let's start not from 90 degree elevation, but instead from 0 degree like we have solar eclipse at 6 AM in the morning. You can't even see the sun at horizon level. Then you have 5 hours eclipse. And still, if using linear speed, the shadow goes outside the Earth. Do you know why it fails? Because you can't get 5 hours eclipse on the globe model. The moon would travel 18,415 kilometers, while the Earth's diameter is only 12,742 kilometers. That would make the moon half Earth, outside the Earth. This is real fantasy, folks. Congratulations. Based on their official data, you just found a fatal error on the globe model. Now let's see the eclipse movement with 3D model. You can use solar system scope. It's supposed to be correct according to heliocentric model. The time, speeds, directions, and eclipse duration are to scale. Only the sizes are not to scale. They make them bigger to make it easier for you to see the movements. Set your time to August 21st, 2017 at 3:55 PM UTC. We'll run it for 5 hours, scaled to about 5 seconds. It's gonna be quick, but we can replay it. The time will be 3:55 PM to 8:55 PM. Please focus on the Earth rotation speed and direction. Also the moon's orbital speed and direction. See which one is faster. Ready? Go. You see that the Earth rotation is faster. Let's zoom it. The moon is almost like not moving. That means they're using angular speed. The Earth's rotating at 15 degrees per hour. The moon's traveling at 0.51 degrees per hour. With this angular speed, to which direction the shadow goes? Because the Earth is spinning faster to the east, the moon's shadow goes the opposite direction, from east to west. Exactly like Najwa has shown you. Only this 3D animation is using true scale of speeds according to heliocentrism. But don't trust CGI cartoons. Let's make a real-life model now. This time, I collaborate with Pupu. He is a technical engineer and a very diligent researcher. He made our previous AutoCAD scale model into real-life model. This is the Earth and the Moon's model to scale. This is the Moon's traveling distance in 5 hours. And this is the Earth's rotation in 5 hours too. This is the Earth-Moon distance. You remember those angular lines. The Moon travels 18,415 kilometers, but it's only 2.55 degrees from the Earth's axis. That's the true sizes, distances, and speeds according to heliocentric model. Assisted by Dama as cameraman, we put 3 cameras on the model. First one is above the Earth to see the Earth's rotation angles. Second camera is above the Moon to see the Moon's traveling distance and angles. Third one is behind the Moon to see where the shadow falls in 5 hours time scale. Remember, we're not looking for the eclipse shadow size. The source of light with its scale should be 475 meters, or almost half kilometers away, and the lamp diameter should be 4.36 meters. It's irrelevant for this purpose, because we're just looking at the shadow's direction, not the shadow size. We start from the 0 point, where the eclipse starts. You see the Earth is at 0 degree position, and the Moon is also at 0 degree position. The shadow is slightly to the west of the Earth, because the eclipse started at 15:55 UTC, or 10:55 local time in the morning. If you stand on that shadow point on Earth, you would see the Moon is slightly to the east, where the Moon rises as appears on Earth. Now the Earth rotates for 15 degrees. The Moon is moving 3,683 kilometers, but only 0.51 degree from the Earth's axis. See where the shadow falls. Oops, it's not angular speed, but linear speed. This is a disaster for the globe model. Yes, it means the shadow moves from west to east, but it means the moon is setting to the east, and within 3 hours, the shadow will go outside the Earth. Second hour. Third hour. You see the shadow already falls outside the Earth. Fourth hour. It's more than the Earth diameter. This is the fifth hour. The shadow goes half Earth outside the Earth. How can heliocentrism predict eclipses if the maths don't even add up for one eclipse? No wonder NASA still used ancient Babylonian solar cycle. Let's take a look at who are these Babylonians who invented solar cycle. Babylonians are descendants of Sumerian, the first modern human civilization 6,000 years ago, earlier than ancient Egypt. It's located in Mesopotamia, or modern-day Syria and Iraq, the birthplace of Abraham, the father of 3 religions, Hebrew, Christian, and Islam. It's the cradle of civilization. Their inventions and achievements are still used today. Astronomy, irrigation, architecture, mathematics, politics, code of law, urban planning, almost everything except internet and cable TV. They are very smart people. Their alphabets, cuneiform, consist of 400 characters, not 26 characters ABCD like us. Their numeral system is sexagesimal or base 60, not base 10 like us. Sexagesimal is very good for counting big numbers and small numbers, still used today for measuring time, angles, and geographic coordinates. They are the one who invented 360 degrees in a circle. Do you know why there are 660 degrees in a circle? It's the average days of the sun and the moon circling the earth in a year. The sun is circling the earth in 365.2425 days, and the moon is circling the earth in 354.3829 days. Add those numbers, you will get 719.61 days. So the average of lunar and solar days in a year is 359.8 days, rounding to 360 days. That's where the Babylonians got the idea of 360 degrees in a circle and got sexagesimal numeric system base 60. It's really natural science. They are the one who invented lunar calendar, synodic month, the real astronomical event. The beginning and ending of each month is based on moon phases, hence the name month. That's natural science. On the other hand, modern-day solar calendar system is based on nothing. If you want to make solar calendar based on natural phenomena, the new year should be either summer, June 22nd, autumn, September 23rd, winter, December 22nd, or spring, March 21st. But solar calendar starts with January the 1st, which means nothing, and ends with December 31st, which also means nothing. It's not really solar calendar, and every date of the month has nothing to do with the moon. You're using a wrong calendar system. Yet, Babylonians were aware of solar cycle too, so they invented the so-called lunisolar calendar. Its lunar calendar consists of 12 months, the closest lunar cycle with solar cycle in a year. They are the one who invented 7 days in a week. They observed the stars are moving in the same directions and the same speed, except there are 7 sky objects that move differently. They call it the 7 wandering stars. Later, by the ancient Greeks, it's called planets. That's the origin of the word planet. Planet is not a ball that living creature can live on it like you always see in CGI cartoons published by NASA. Planet is a wandering star, a star which has its own path and speed circling the Earth. Those 7 wandering stars, or 7 planets of the Earth, are the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. Then Babylonians devoted 7 days every week to honor those 7 wandering stars. The first day to honor the Sun, hence the name Sunday. Second day to honor the Moon, Monday. Third day is for Mars, or in Nordic is called Tyr, Tuesday. Fourth day for Mercury, Mercredi in French. In German and Dutch is called Odin or Woden, Wednesday. Fifth day for Jupiter, Jueves in Spanish, its Nordic god Thor, Thursday. Sixth day to honor Venus, Viernes in Spanish, its Nordic god of Frigg, Friday. The seventh day to honor Saturn, Saturday. That's the influence of Babylonian culture. We still use it until now. Babylonians are the ones who invented the concept of clock, the sundial. Then they divided a day by 12 hours daytime and 12 hours nighttime. Where did they get the number 12? Of course, it's the 12 zodiac constellations in a year, and it takes 12 lunar cycles or months for the sun to return to its original position. Like every other celestial body circling the Earth in a certain cycle, Babylonians observed that solar and lunar eclipses happen in a cycle of 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. That's the only way to predict eclipses. Nothing to do with heliocentric speeds and distances. Babylonians were using lunar calendar. They knew that solar eclipses always happen in new moon, and lunar eclipses always happen in full moon. They knew well that during solar eclipses, the moon's position is at the nearest point to the sun. Yet, they never thought it's the moon that eclipsing the sun. This is very interesting. Since kids, we've been told and educated in schools that solar eclipses are caused by the moon, and moon eclipses are caused by the whole Earth's shadow. A theory without any single proof, but taught in schools like a fact. Babylonians, however, observed the sky much more often and more careful than us. They didn't have internet and cable TV or social media to chat. They had the luxury of time to live in harmony with nature. Why didn't they think it's the moon that eclipsing the sun? First, because they knew there are so many unseen celestial bodies in the sky. Second, because they knew the moon is behind the sun. If the moon is in front of the sun, you would see the moon is getting close to the sun before eclipses, right? But you never see it. Let's use our logics here. Why can't you see the stars during daytime? Because the sun is too bright, right? And because the stars are behind the sun. There is no star between the sun and the earth, even according to heliocentrism. All stars are behind the sun is very bright at daytime, therefore you can't see the stars during daytime. But the moon is 400 times closer than the sun, according to heliocentrism. The moon is between the earth and the sun when it's new moon, and it's behind the earth when it's full moon. Sometimes you can see the moon very clear in the morning. So why can't you see the moon when it's new moon? Because the sun is too bright? Hell no. You can see every single object in front of the sun during daytime. You can see the clouds, airplanes, birds, etc. Sometimes you can see the moon in the sunlight. So why can't you see the moon when it's new moon? Because the moon is in unseen position? No, it's not correct either. Even in heliocentrism, the moon is near the sun during the new moon. So why you never see the moon when it's new moon? Because the moon is behind the sun at the time of the new moon. Third, Babylonians who invented star cycle never thought the sun is eclipsed by the moon because they knew the moon's body can't eclipse the sun. Ancient people were aware of many unidentified celestial bodies that sometimes can be seen with naked eyes. Only a dark celestial body can eclipse the sun out of nowhere. Just like lunar eclipses are caused by other celestial bodies, so are solar eclipses. Babylonians called it the planet of crossing, planet X, dark sun if you will. And so do every cultures in the world. In India, they call it Rahu and Ketu. In Java, Indonesia, they call it Batara Kala. Not because ancient people are stupid, but because they really use their senses. Their senses told them it's not the moon eclipsing the sun, it's a dark sky object that can absorb light. And it's not the Earth shadow that eclipsed the moon either. It's a similar dark sky object. And you know what? They didn't just make theories. They calculated the cycle of these dark objects, so accurate we still use today, SARS cycle. On the other hand, you don't use your own eyes and your own senses. You just follow what NASA told you. This is just to open your mind. The world is not like they told you. There are so many anomalies in eclipses. You can study the shadow using real-life scale model. I've tried with Pupung. We're using real sunlight, no question about brightness, lumens, and so on. But don't do it in open air, because the bigger the light, the smaller the shadow. In total solar eclipses, the source of light should be the same with the object that eclipses it. Using scale model, for a 10 cm Earth, you have to use a 2.92 meters of pipe. This is very important to make the source of light to scale. The result is quite devastating. The shadow is about 16 times bigger than it should be. In reality, eclipse shadow size is about 70 miles or around 100 kilometers. They make it in CGI cartoons as if a 3,474 kilometers of moon from 384,000 kilometers distance can make a 100 kilometers of shadow. So they make CGI cartoons with shadow shaped like a pencil. It doesn't exist in reality. With real-life scale model, the shadow is actually 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers. With a globe model, eclipse shadow would cover the whole Kalimantan island. Unbelievable. With a globe model to scale, eclipse shadow would be so big that can cover Portugal, Spain, and France at once. This is a disaster for the globe model. All your life, you only see eclipses of fantasy. On the other hand, in the flat earth model, the diameters of the sun, the moon, or whatever object eclipsing the sun is about 32 miles or around 60 kilometers. If you don't like mathematics, you can use AutoCAD and neutral software for professionals. You can verify by yourself from 5,000 kilometer height. They will make shadow size exactly like reality. 105.7 kilometers like the real eclipse shadow in Idaho Falls. Look at the eclipse shadow speed. Umbra velocity is 1,874 miles per hour or 3,015 kilometers per hour. Their science says eclipse shadow speed is the same as the moon speed because heliocentric sun is 400 times bigger than the moon. So 5 hours movement of the moon means nothing. Only makes 0.006989959 degree difference. If you like mathematics, you can verify yourself. Therefore, they say that the eclipse shadow moves at the same speed as the moon itself. It's mathematically correct with that assumptions, but it doesn't fit with reality. The moon travels at 3,683 kilometers, making shadow on Earth that spins at 1,670 kilometers, both to the same direction from west to east. The shadow should move at 2,013 kilometers per hour, but look at the reality. It moves at 3,015 kilometers per hour. It doesn't add up. You can also study the eclipse pattern. How can the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon creating such zigzag pattern? Look carefully. The path even goes slightly below Earth curvature. As NASA wrote in its official data, is a geocentric coordinate. What does it mean? Geocentric coordinate is geographic coordinate system in which the Earth is modeled as a sphere or spheroid in right-handed XYZ like 3D in AutoCAD. That means originally the coordinate is in flat map, then projected into the Earth globe model. In fact, all globe maps that you've seen in your entire life is a geocentric coordinate or a projection from a flat map to a globe map. Last but certainly not least is the one that we have discussed. Most people don't notice that the eclipse duration was 5 hours and don't realize what it means. This is the reason why I make this episode in English, to share that this kind of eclipse is mathematically and geometrically impossible on the globe model. Please don't use 3D animation model. You can make Superman spinning the Earth backward with CGI. Please use real-life scale model. The shadow will go outside the globe after 3 hours. You can take it from here and bring it to another level.
Every single time.
Mike here, glad you could join me. This is the short version of Soundly's photo that was used in Globebusters. Now, Soundly was on Globebusters, and he showed Bob and Jared that you can pull a moon image out of the eclipse. And I thought that was very strange, since out of the hundreds of photos taken of the eclipse that day and all the many raw image data that was sent to me, nobody saw the moon at all, except, well, for Soundly, of course. And so Bob believed Soundly, and since Bob believed Soundly, well, then I was interested because I was after a real picture of the moon. Now, I'm not against Soundly, and I totally disagree with his Lake Pontchartrain conclusions. I totally disagree with him faking the ISS video he just put up and some other things he's faked. But, you know, it is YouTube, and you are allowed to content create whatever you want to get subs and ad revenue. I run no ads on my channel, and I receive no revenue from my channel but that which people donate to me once in a great while, and I am thankful for that. But anyways, Bob went ahead and contacted me. He asked me, was Soundly's image fake? Now, I gave Bob a definite yes, it has to be fake, because, you know, if you have 100 people pointing their camera at the forest and only one person gets that picture of Bigfoot standing in front of everybody, well, that's kind of suspicious. And so I went in to pursue to investigate this. And normally I use forensic software and Photoshop to debunk UFOs, ISS fake stations, and destroy NASA. And no, that's not hard to do. I've never really looked at an eclipse before, and there's some things I had to understand about the rotation of the eclipse, the position of it at various locations, before I was able to make a determination on some things. And so it's a learning process for me. However, I was determined to get the truth, as always, and I deceived no one. This zip file or rare file that you see here, I got, this was sent to me after I went to Soundly and Sean. They gave this link to me here on a Google Drive, and I downloaded the zip file. It's taken from a Nikon D4. I know Soundly owns a Rebel T5 and a P900. I don't know who owns the Nikon D4, or even if the Nikon D4 is real and maybe it was just faked in the EXIF data. I have no clue. The two pictures in the set of pictures that are real and untouched are these two here, this one and this one. And after I examined the images, I went back to Sean and I told him flat out, these are not real. You guys manipulated these. And he still won't come clean. And I don't understand that faking. If you fake something, just say you faked it and let everybody move on, you know, just admit it and drop it and let's go. But however, Sean would not do that. So I did not let the pressure off of them. And finally, Soundly messaged me a little bit too late, though, because I did offer him to come in the video with Anthony Riley and I guess he was doing a football game. I don't know. Maybe he didn't get the message in time. But I certainly did invite him to see what I did and how I determined his images were fake, and to answer any questions that he had about it, to do it up front. He says, Mike, tell me, I did not use that image. But the fact that the image exists is a problem. For full disclosure, you should give it to either Sean or myself. Why are you not doing so? So here we have panic mode time. But now they want to come clean. But the problem is, Anthony and I had already made the video, and I asked them. I was on Sean's live chat And they had ample opportunity to say, hey, Mike, yeah, we faked the image. That's all they had to do. It wasn't that difficult. It's not that hard. If you faked it, you faked it. So what? Most YouTube channels out there fake. And folks, every photograph you see on a magazine cover is touched up in not the real image. That's just how things are. And I'm not saying anything's nefarious about doing that, but when you're doing research and you're trying to find out if something was in the sun or not, if the moon was there or not, and that data can't be faked. That's doing research. So I don't need the images Photoshopped for me or the moon added in. The image that I told you that was real is this image here. And we'll just go to image adjustments. I'll do the same thing I did in the long video. And then we'll just maybe do some levels on this. But this image here is 100% real. There's no moon image in here. If you notice this blue area, there's no distortion in this blue area. That's because there's no image overlaid in here. Everything's even. It's not pixelated out, and there's just nothing in this image. When you shut off the different channel colors, the image remains the same. Nothing changes. All the pixel data is there on all 3 channel colors: the red, the green, and the blue. And so that tells me that this image is not manipulated, at least in the sense that a moon picture wasn't added on here. Everything in the image gradients out like it should. There's no extra image in here, nothing that would tell me that it's fake or blocking anything. And all the pixel data is the same in the whole image. And that's another thing I didn't cover in the other video. In the faked images, the pixel data is at a lower resolution than the rest of the image. But if we were to zoom in here, we get this real fine pixel data. It's nice and fine. You can see this. Now remember this, and we'll come back to this here in a second. This image here is the one Soundly used on Globebusters. Now if we just go to image and see what we can find here. There we go. Now we are getting a picture of the moon. So awesome. But in this image, we are also getting something else. And you can see this line across there. There isn't a box paste, and I'll bring it on to something else. Now, the thing that bothered me with this image here, and if we zoom in, you can see how crazy, how bad the pixel data is. Let me show you the real image here. This pixel data as opposed to this larger, chunkier pixel data. Smooth pixel data, chunky pixel data. Smooth pixel data, chunky pixel data. And so the chunky pixel data is simply because somebody's overlaid a lower resolution image in here, mainly a moon photo. And the other thing about this, unlike the other one, when we turn off the green and the blue, we still have our moon photo in here. But when I shut off this green channel, our moon photo disappears. And then once again, you can see the square box start to appear in here. And so this tells me 100% this image is fake, manipulated, and you know, this moon image should be on all these channels, which I showed in my other video. Unlike this image here, this is original, and once again, it stays the same. Nothing changes, no matter what color channel you're on, and that's the way it should be. So I found this box, and I highlighted it in here. Here we can see there's a box in here. And this box is in here because Soundly or Sean or somebody overlaid a picture of the moon on top of this image. It's there. You can't hide it. It's not at all in this image here. This image here is fine. It pixelates and equalizes evenly. This image here, not so much. It's right in here. We get that box image that somebody overlaid, and that was the moon. Here's the image. I brought it out a little more using this, but if we, you know, it's just on the green channel. It's if we enable another channel, look at it. It's not there. On the red channel, it's not there, but we enable the green, it shows up. Disable the green, it's not there. Blue channel, same thing. If we just use the blue channel, it's not there. You just get this pixelated mess in there because they overlaid something on top of there.
I knew there was something wrong when I saw that light. Tell me, am I going blind? Tell me, am I going blind?
So just to talk eclipse here. I know Mark is saying you have a hangout later on with Mike Helmick and a few others, so I'm not going to get too much into the image processing. I'll leave that with you guys for later on. But this, what I'm going to present, will definitely back up. That's what I'm sure Mike and your group will be talking about later with the Photoshop and the imaging, trying to bring out a moon in the image is the main key that we've been trying to work on. So what I did was I went and made a model of an eclipse. This is a 3D screenshot. So this is in Blender, I made a model, put a solid object in the model, put the light source behind it, put in the atmospheric particulate matter to the right ratios and densities of air, and with the right anisotropic properties of light coming through an air medium, and hit it with the light to simulate the sun, which is this is to scale, so it's at 1.5 million lumens, and the distances are correct to try and simulate an eclipse. And what the model renders, as you can see, you would expect to see a crescent around the actual object itself as it enters into totality, which no one saw or observed in reality. And then I went to the next phase to say, okay, well, how would the light distribution work within that type of anisotropic particle system? So as light hits a solid object, you would expect to see the same crescent with a little bit of backscatter lighting around it. As the light comes around a solid object, you would get a rendering of the entire orb, i.e. if it is the moon or a solid object, in the field in the camera lens with the filter on, right? And you should see a bouncing effect off of the front face, the leading edge. As light hits the object, it bounces out radially, right? So that's what all these lines are in the blue spectrum, because it goes to red and then slows down as it reflects it, it polarizes. So all reflecting light polarizes and hits backwards and creates this effect on the other side. And then the non-polarized light comes around the other side and creates these halos, which is what we see normally, moon halos, sun halos, rainbows, etc. So that's actually what light is supposed to do. And then for comparison, so this is my control, right? This is what it should look like. And for comparison, I took some moon shots from some friends of mine, really excellent photos. Did the same process on it, didn't change the settings. I just changed the process, just changed the photo, used the same settings for the analysis. And a moon shot would transpose to this. So you'll see this is the crescent at the front, now brought forward, and you can still see that there is a moon object in the background. This is like backscatter light. And then I compared that to, let's see, this image here. This is during the eclipse as it approached totality. And what I found the most fascinating about this is you get the red split spectrum that appears in the sensors of the cameras, which isn't that unusual. You see refraction and lens flaring that kind of splits the image in the red spectrum. But what was fascinating was this thing here, being that it's an inverse image of this side of the object coming around and being inverted backwards and being forward projected. So it's being forward projected to you as the observer on the ground to a centralized focal point. So it's this thing, whatever it is, whatever the light's coming through, being refracted and being projected like a lens to you at the ground and appearing in front of you. And you can kind of see if I zoom in a little bit on this image. Oops, go back one, right there. So this is the actual object being refracted, and there's a whole bunch of little tiny ghost ones in the air. Right, you can kind of see them being split out in the air. And what happened during the eclipse? Well, I'll show you how that analyzes actually first. So what I analyzed was I took it to the spectrum gradient to take out some of the red and bring the black forward, right? So I could, wash out all the interfering light patterns to see what I could see. And it renders out to this here. And there's some interesting things in this picture. So here's that object again being forward projected. There is something, a little bit of a dot up here that appears to be a physical object of some kind. And then this gradient shows the edge of whatever is causing the eclipse. It cannot be seen, so it's actually not visible. Because when I take it to the other spectrum, like I did with the moon and my control, there's nothing there, right? Absolutely nothing. Except you can see that something is causing the magnetic field, which, light traveling through the field is photons, and photons have magnetic fields. So, magnets can bend light as they travel through, they become polarized. You can see that this is the focus point, and those little half moons do kind of sort of appear in the gradient. But whatever's causing the eclipse is completely absent. There's nothing there. And so when I went to the next phase of the analysis to see, well, what can I see if I invert that to a negative and amplify it? So I did that to try and find out what was there, if anything. And then what I found was, well, there's the light because it's intense, so it comes out just as a gray wash because this is a negative. And whatever's supposed to be there is not there, but you can see that it is having an effect on the light scatter in the negative field. And whatever's coming through that object down to create this half moon is causing a bending of the light being forward projected down here. So the angle's coming through from the top right down through the object, appearing here to be forward projected to the center of frame, and then scattering in the background below it in the left. So that tells me there's an electromagnetic cause. There's an electromagnetic force that is causing this to happen in that gradient. And I did it in 2 different gradients just to amplify it to see what's really happening here.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So then the next thing is, okay, well, what's causing that, right? And the typical NASA response in their videos online in the mainstream media is that what we're seeing, that blue object, if I go back here, this blue object here is coming down through the atmosphere plane above our heads, through our air and everything else, and it's being forward projected and causing all these little moons on the ground by the millions. People took thousands of pictures of these. Sometimes, depending on if you were north of the equator or south of the equator, they would appear upside down, or if you were north of the equator, they appeared the other way, right? With the crescent facing up and they were being inverted as a shadow. So this is like the same image being rendered as white light on the ground because it's going through the blue into the white and spectrum change. So then I said, well, how far, where is that actually happening and what's causing it? And I looked at some high altitude footage at 75,000 feet with a 360 camera. And that's what the eclipse looked like at 75,000 feet through a 360 camera. Wow. And there's all those little orbs again. I was like, wow, right? Like literally, wow. And there's the orbs. And you can see that, you know, there could be a little bit of frosting or ice or whatever on the lens camera, but it's at altitude, right? So it's cold up there, 75,000 feet. But that doesn't say that that's the cause. What that tells me is the angle of light that's being projected to the lens, because you're getting an unequal distribution of light scatter. Some are over here. This one's being illuminated more than this one. This one's a full dead-on center. So this means the light's coming almost perfectly to the center of the lens as it looks out through the medium. You're getting a really nice rendering of the image. So that tells me that's a multiple diffraction pattern, right? It's coming from all angles in a like your perspective, right? Your degrees of your perspective coming at all angles into a center point. So it's multiple diffraction, right? There's no way of getting around that. So millions of these diffraction angles are now being projected down onto the cat. And it's not just cats, it's dogs too. There's a dog, right? So we're going to be fair. The dogs get it too, yeah. It's raining cats and dogs. Yeah. So
raining moons on cats.
Raining moons on cats and dogs, yeah, exactly. So, you know, we've all kind of most of us have seen that video where, you know, it was particularly NASA was trying to explain that, oh, that's just a pinhole effect where the light comes through the trees and causes the trees to act like pinhole cameras, and you get multiple projections on the ground. Well, being an artist and painter, I mean, that's another one of my hobbies. I do music, art, and paint. I know how pinhole cameras work, right? And what a pinhole camera will do is you can take a pinhole camera light, and what it does, it will actually invert the image, but it projects the entire field of view, right, through a pinhole and replicates the entire image on a background, right? It is true that pinhole cameras will work, but pinhole cameras will not split multiple images into multiple refractions unless it's coming from multiple angles. You see what I mean? You'd have to have a million holes in this type of screen, or on that mirror. This one's actually being projected through a pinhole and reflected off and bouncing in the room. But you'd have to have millions of holes in it, and each image coming from a different angle in order to get multiple images of the same thing from all different angles, like a three-dimensional effect. And that's what that is on the ground, is a three-dimensional scattering. Right? It's coming from all angles, every direction, multiple intensities. So there's no way to say that that is a pinhole camera effect. And we have to reverse that in our minds. So here I'll show you something here with the moon here. To be fair, we'll compare a picture of this image I showed you before with that orb thing, compared to a moon that Judith sent me. This is one of Judith's pictures. And she had sent me, and she said, here's the red. So the red is normal, right? And this green here, greenish area, if I was to invert that and do the same thing, you would see that, well, that's this just being reversed, right? That's normal. Light bouncing, there's the orb. But in this case, there is nothing here, and it's being forward projected through a lens, right? That's the only way. That's the comparison. The moon will scatter it and cause a flash image or a flare of itself. And this is completely different. So it's not the same thing. So then I concluded that, let me see what else is going on. One of the best explanations I could come up with in a model to say how is that happening is this image here. So I took it into a model. I made an orb. This is a plasma field of UV light. This is a solid object in a 3D model. So the light scatters everywhere within the model itself. So it's just like a square, but the light source scatters everywhere. So it's going in all directions. But since the source is localized to a projected point, as the light bounces around in the field, the particles go through the orb and go back to the source. So that creates a shadow. So if you imagine that you were standing inside of this orb looking back towards the sun, you would actually be seeing your own shadow, canceling out the light that's trying to reach you, because now it's going back just as fast as it is trying to come towards you. It's your own shadow, in essence, traveling backwards. That's one of the processes I'm trying to understand, see how that works. Then I simulated in a model the same setup. So I took a light a very intense light, 1,000,000 lumens. This is a solid, right here is a solid moon simulated object or something to interfere. It's a sphere to interfere with the light. And then this area here is a simulated dome lens to give it something to appear on and focus on. And then this field underneath here is a particle field. So it's a semi-transparent particle field to simulate the atmosphere. So it hits that, bounces through, creates the half moon through the air, and bounces on the ground to create the half moon over here. So that was my first attempt to say what can be causing this. So you can see that in this rendering, in this model setup, it's just a projection, like a standard projection at a movie theater type of idea. So it's backlit. This would be like, what was his name that did the one with the monkeys, you know, the Space 2001. Yeah, Stanley Kubrick came up with this like a back projection type of thing, right? So the whole NASA thing. But anyway, that's kind of like what they use. But you can see you only get one rendering of the image, and as it travels through the lens, hits the air, travels to the ground, it expands to create, you know, what would be a shadow on the ground or illuminated crescent. It's not making millions of them, right? It's only making one. And no matter where you move with the light source, you're only going to get one image projecting forward through that type of lens. So that tells me that in order to make this happen, you need millions of lenses, individual crystals, and the light has to be traveling down the center of a crystal to be projected like a hologram or like a laser. Like when you do a laser, you send the light through a crystal, make a perfect laser, focus the light, and then it hits the ground like a laser beam from many, many angles all at the same time. Cliffs, without an object being there, the best explanation I could come up with for that so far is electromagnetic interference. So the light is there, but whatever that object is a black body radiation absorber that has an intense electromagnetic field, enough so that it'll allow some light to pass through its periphery surface because it must have a boundary layer to have a charge. But it's so negatively charged on the inside, it absorbs everything that comes into it and lets very little of it come out. What does come out comes out in the blue spectrum, and what is inside of it is absorbing all the light and just making a black hole. It's like literally a black magnetic hole. Nothing comes out of it. So I took that idea and I took this image of the eclipse sent to me by a friend and started to say, okay, the light scattering from around the outside is following a magnetic pattern. This is just a magnetic Polaroid. So I'm trying to visualize that in 3 dimensions to either rule out that it is an electromagnetic orb object or a planetary object that's above the dome and interfering with the light path trying to reach the surface and just canceling it all out. And it has some interesting ramifications too. What happens, you know, the NASA thing where it's a forward projected image on the ground makes absolutely no sense. Because if I showed you that picture of the moon here again, let's scroll up here. There's the moon, and we should see that if that's actually reality, and as light passes through trees, right, then every crescent moon and every moon phase would come through the trees at night, and you would see animals in the forest that look like this, right? They would adapt, right, to be camouflaged, right? You know, every bird that flew over the sky as the moonlight came down, or the sunlight came down, would be projected as a secondary image on the ground, and you'd have, you know, one bird would appear like an entire flock on the ground, and every animal predator would be running around chasing ghosts that don't exist, right? So if your mind is going to accept that forward projection thing of NASA and pinhole cameras, I'm just suggesting you think again, right?
Can I ask you something, Chris? Is this only happening at the eclipse, or does those pictures with the shadows of the moon, or can that happen at any time, or is this just in the eclipse?
This is just during the eclipse. See, and that's what makes me ugly, is because I think it was Time or Now This did the NASA video, and it actually says in that NASA video that this happens normally all the time. Sunlight or light does this is a normal process. Well, that's a complete and utter nonsense. It's not a normal process. It only happens during eclipses. Like I said, otherwise the moon would do it every day, right through the forest and the trees, and the sun would do that every day. If something passed between it and the pinhole camera in a tree, and there was a bird sitting in the tree, well, then you would see 1,000 birds on the ground, right? It doesn't happen, right? And it just blows my mind why that is. Yeah. But the long story short, if I can bring up some other.
Can I just say, in the chat room, Ditra, Dave, down the rabbit hole Dave, he asked if you would show your tree with the apples in it.
The tree, yeah. So clearly what's going on to me is that we are, on the plane of inertia, right? We experience in the center point where the two negatives and positive come together and balance in a neutral. We experience a slightly biased system that's slightly biased towards the positive, so it keeps us down, right? We experience that as gravity. We're on the plane of inertia in the center of a magnetic field, toroidal, like a double toroidal field. All the light that's outside of it is coming through the firmament. You could call it the firmament, the dome, which could be, I don't know what it's constructed of. It's, you know, like molten, liquid molten glass that keeps everything from, you know, keeps it safe. It creates a dome so that we have pressure in the system. You can't have an open system to vacuum and still maintain pressure, right? It just doesn't work. So you have to have something to contain the pressure that we experience as atmospheric pressure of 14.6 psi, whatever the number is. It's around 14 psi, right? And that's the only way that would work. And we're on this inertial plane, and this is like the tree up the center cone, right? The tree of life, the whole 9 yards. It's right there, and it goes in both directions. There's a negative and a positive. We just happen to be on the positive side of it, right? Which gives us the sense of gravity, but it's also neutrally negative. Like our bones are made of dielectrics, calcium. You know, our bodies are made of water. We have salt in our bodies. We have some iron in our bodies. So the iron flows in the positive direction that allows our blood to flow. The dielectrics and the negative side of it in our bones is actually what's holding us up. So it's the bottom side, the negative, that's actually allowing us to stand, because it's actually levitating us to a certain degree, you know, helping our bones, which are calcium, float in a magnetic field. So that's the basic construct, and we're in the center of it. So then I got looking at the electrical side of it and studying the moon. Since we're talking the moon and the eclipses here, a friend of mine, Brad Gillen, he sent me these pictures, and what we did was oversaturated them just to bring out some of the colors of the image we were seeing. And the images in the color phase lines up with anodizing of titanium and other rare alloys. So the charge, because the craters, which are all at 90 degrees to the surface, so nothing comes in at an angle, they're all sparked and arced to the surface to cause the craters on the moon. You can actually see the approximate voltage required at each point if you do it in a color spectrum. Right, so as color changes, the more you saturate it, the deeper the color. So the golds are at about 50 volts, you know, 1,000,000 amps, whatever it was, right? High amperage, right? Low volt, high amperage, and just went bang and creates this crater, right? Some of them are negative, some of them are positive. The ones that have a raised center would be, you know, the inverse of the ones that don't, right? It's just an inverse polarity. And you can call out some of the, you know, people that are trying to post images like this one here and superimpose the moon over front. I'm sure Dave or Mike will probably talk about that when he meets up there, but so I won't get into that too much, but that's what it really looks like in reality. So let's see. The next thing is kind of some evidence of that is in order to have a multiple diffraction, right, of it coming through a lens and getting more than one image on the ground, you have to have the object between, and the lens is between, the object is actually between the light source and the lens, and it just diffracts into multiple images. And here's another image. Now this person got a cool image. This came, Monique Chenard from Moncton here. She sent me a video, a link to a fellow that actually was talking about the Moon Group and asked me to give another video and to take a look at this. So I grabbed a screenshot just to discuss with everybody. My initial thoughts on this was that this is an image of the eclipse in progress. And you can see that this is the sun and this is the occulting object that's being refracted in the red spectrum. There's a bit of a duplication of this image in the center of this green orb here. So there's a duplication of it in red. You can kind of see it's very, very faint if I zoom in there. Sorry for the phone ringing there in the background. So there it is again. It's kind of like purpley pink here now. So that's just this image duplicated. And because of that, you can deduce, you say, okay, well, if this image is being duplicated slightly as a doubling effect, so that's a double image, then this green image is a double image of this red image. And if I was to take that out and do some color spectrum, if I had the original image, you could probably do that. And you would say that this Ankh type shape with the polarized plasma bouncing around inside whatever that is, it's like a plasma ball, you know, the ones you put your hands on, right? Static charge, the plasma's on the inside, you touch it on the outside, and these lightning bolts, you know, dance around the glass, right? That's, to me, that's my first instinct, is that's exactly what that looks like, right? So I'm leaning towards some sort of a, outside of the dome, there's another object, the light's passing through, canceling out the sun and projecting it forward. And it looks to be spherical of some kind, or some kind of a lens. And yeah, it's like the Ankh, that's the Egyptian Ankh type of shape. That just kind of blew my mind when I saw that. So I'm looking into that one with some more detail. But the main rub here is that the system and the plane that we're on in this reality, like looking at all of this evidence and the eclipses and everything else, is that the whole secret of the system is a dielectric neutral on the bottom, which goes back to that, the tree shape there, the double toroid. So we have the negative and the positive on the bottom, and the circuit, like we've gone through all those circuits of the ancient history with the cities being destroyed and the craters in the ground and all the destruction in the history and everything, is basically this. It's the Earth and the oceans are a dielectric, and of course it has positive and negative. Iron mountains versus salt mountains and everything else. It's obviously well distributed, but it has a bias to the negative dielectric. And then the positive is on the outside in a Gaussian sphere, like under the dome. The dome would have its own charge capacitance. Essentially, it's a giant capacitor. The dome itself is the outside boundary, and then the Earth center is a neutral, and it's just a positive and negative dielectric dance in the middle. And if you had an air gap right to the ground in the air, and then plug that into the water, you've got the circuit that Tesla had in Tesla's tower. Right, it's exactly the same circuit with a coil on the top, a pipe into the ground, tapping into the water, and the ground circuit, and then an air gap in the vacuum in between, and the coil takes it off as a charge. And that's exactly what Tesla was doing, and I think that's why J.P. Morgan and all the rest squashed and confiscated and hid all of his work, amongst others. I mean, every time someone tries to come to the surface and bring this forward, it just gets squashed, because I think, one, you have to treat it with a lot of respect, because if you don't do it right, you could be bringing down whatever it is above our heads onto our heads if you don't control it properly. And two, it's a free energy circuit. I mean, it's an unfathomably huge, never-ending free energy source, right? It's easily tapped into. It's just three-phase power with a vacuum gap. But you'd have to regulate and treat it with respect. Obviously, you don't want any Joe Blow out there trying to tap into the sky, because it's a dangerous source. And that's the thing, that they don't want that information coming out, whoever they are. The ones, the powers that be, that want to control the energy and the oil and the power and everything else. It is really that simple. It's that simple a circuit. Just to go back to the eclipse thing, I did a little bit of an analysis here on some eclipse photos. What I did with this one is pretty much the same phase that I showed you before, where it's partial eclipse, and the object you can't see it, but the object would be in this zone here, and I'm zooming into just the edge of the object, right at the edge of wherever that arch is. And when I zoomed in on it, right, you can see that it looks like there's craters there, right? There's some craters and some backscatter light inside the black spot, right, just at the edge. And I zoomed in on that and tried to get some images of it to see what it was. Different ideas. So that was interesting in itself. But then what I also did was I checked the other side of it, right? You have to check the other, if you're going to be looking at it, you got to check both where the image is being occulted and what's being scattered on this side. So this would be, in theory, on the other side of the sun. And you get the same images appearing in this field as you do over in this field. So it's the same thing on both sides, whether it's on the black side or the red side or the lit side. It's the same type of effect. So it's just backscatter, photon radiation that you're catching in the lens. So it doesn't indicate that there's any moon there at all, or any object, because you get the same thing either way. It doesn't matter. There's no evidence that that is actually the moon. So it's found it quite fascinating.
So basically, nobody saw the moon before, during, or after the eclipse.
That's correct, in my opinion. Yeah.
So the conclusion would be that the moon didn't cause the eclipse. That would be the logical conclusion, right?
That's my logical conclusion. Yeah, it wasn't observed. Now, it's not to say that the moon during its phase of new moon isn't in the proximity of the sun and or behind it or somewhere else in the same field, right? And both are being occulted, right? Because we know the new moon phase is being occulted during the new moon. It just, once a month it does it. That's a natural thing. So the difference is that the moon would pass through that cancellation field, every month, but the sun only does it, 3-4 times a year, right? So the constant is that there is something that is interfering with the light of both objects, right? A new moon is essentially a solar eclipse. It happens once a month. Right. The phases of the moon is a perpetual eclipse that just phases in and out of eclipse phase, right? It just never stops. But the sun only hits that point, 4 times a year. It's just a different path of the light. Right?
So could the sun be acting like the moon's phases, just only several times a year?
Yep, that's what I'm thinking. Yep, exactly the same thing. So whatever's causing that it's consistent with both, but it's independent, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, with those photographs we all saw now, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And what about I was thinking about the meteor craters, which are obviously not caused by any rocks from outer space. So could it have something to do with this electromagnetic force and with their lunar craters that we see?
You mean, is there a tie-in between the craters on the moon and the craters on Earth? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Could they be caused like from a electromagnetic force acting under the Earth somehow?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. In my opinion, it's the majority of the craters on Earth are caused by electromagnetic strikes and the cataclysmic type of arcing out. And it's quite possible that at one point in history, ancient history, the moon was actually involved in a huge electromagnetic storm, shorting out to the Earth's surface. Absolutely. That's, people want to kind of look into that theory and stuff and how that actually works is I recommend the Electric Universe websites, and there's 20 years worth of research there. But the interesting part is you can't find that on Wikipedia. It's actually a banned topic on Wikipedia. So the mainstream is not allowing anyone, or they're trying to stop people from looking at the Electric Universe theory because it backs all this up 100%. And even though the Electric Universe, I think the majority of those people that are studying, because they're all PhD electric, physicists and plasma physicists, and it's really high-end stuff. But the majority of those people aren't flat earthers. But the foundational principles upon which the Electric Universe theory is built is exactly this principle, right? It's a dielectric field. We're in a dielectric circuit, and we're in a capacitance type of process between the two. There's a charge differential. As above, so below, but it's inverted, and it's just backward.
Those things that you have to do in science for it to be science?
I stuck my foot in my mouth, and I'd like to think that I have the disease called foot-in-mouth disease. Because it happens all the time.
Science?
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.